It was called white witchcraft. We were doing good things, combating the bad spirits. When you put white witchcraft on it, you know, it doesn't seem so bad.
Change, and it's all so plain to see.
Hi, I'm Ruth Ann Leelisher. Welcome to Damascus Roads. This story certainly is one about a changed life. The road takes us down a path that none of us would choose. A path of abuse, alcoholism, racism, the occult, and even witchcraft. This is a story of a woman who was rescued from a pit. Please, meet Lolita.
Well, I was raised in Chicago till I was 7. I lived in between two homes, really. There was an older couple down the street named the Johnsons. They were friends of my mother's when she was a little girl, and they helped take care of me when my mother was working. So as a way to keep myself company, I would go in the back room and I would sing and make up songs and perform to pretend audiences and stuff. I've always loved music. But I do remember singing Dionne Warwick's song all the time, You'll Never Get to Heaven. Mother told me always to follow the golden rules. And she said it's really a sin to be mean or cruel. So remember, if you are cruel, angels up in heaven are looking at you. You'll never get to heaven if you break my heart. So be very careful not to break this heart. You won't get to heaven if you break my heart. Oh no. I didn't know you were going to have me sing on the spot. Mrs. Johnson took me to church. They were Baptists, and they took me all the time, and so I would learn the songs as a little girl, and I'd come home and sing them. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, but it was different. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I would ask Mrs. Johnson, where's my dad? Where's my father? And she would just tell me, well, honey, I think there's things that maybe you need to ask your mom. And so she would never answer it. She would always change the subject. And one time I asked my grandmother where my dad was, and my grandmother told me that he had died in the Air Force, and that his name was Bill. And so that, at that point, that just kind of calmed my curiosity.
I didn't particularly care for, you know, the boys. I mean, I would see a boy, and I was pretty shy that way. One day, someone knocked at my door, and this is where my story begins. This young man was coming to see my sister. This person started wooing me, and I guess because of my neediness, and they was much older than me, that was the first time that I had sex with someone. I was 16. And then after that, my life really just changed. I mean, I was caught up into something that it was a web. I didn't know how to get out of it. And when I was 18 years old, then I got pregnant with Lolita. I really, really thought I was in love with this person. And this person was very nice to me, but it was wrong. He was married. He was married to my sister. And I got pregnant by him.
All the families got together over at my grandparents' house, and I can remember people were going into my uncle was a photographer, and he was taking pictures of each of the family groups. I remember watching each of my cousins, because they all had moms and dads, and they were sitting together as families, and I felt very left out because it was just me and my mom. And I often felt like something was wrong. So many times I felt like I didn't have a place. I was odd. Something was wrong with me because I didn't have a dad. My uncle, he paid attention to me. When the other kids were playing, he would call me in the back room, and he would want to show me things and talk to me and ask me, did I want to go for rides with him to go get things from the store. I would go, and then he would buy me candy and he would buy me ice cream, but yet he was also doing things that were not right. He would show me pornographic books, and he would touch me in areas which was totally inappropriate for him to do. I was 6. I can remember it happening around 6. And after the event was over, I would come out of the room just feeling like humiliated and feeling dirty and feeling just really awful. And the kids would look and they'd put their heads down in shame because they knew what was going on. But I thought they were looking at me saying that I was the bad one, that I was shameful.
You know, you don't ever think that somebody's going to do that. You never think that somebody's so rotten. I never dreamt that this person was the kind of person that he was until later on when I started finding out things.
We didn't know it at the time. We didn't discuss it till we got a little older. But he was messing with his own children and then some of the other nieces. But we didn't go to the adults because we were afraid.
You know, when you meet these people that do those type of things to children, they're smooth, they're nice. They don't come like, you know, bad. They come nice. They bring you things. They do nice things for you. They understand you. They have something, some kind of a gift that know the kids to pick on.
You can see a murderer coming with you with an axe, but somebody that comes with you with kindness and yet has these type of things going on is heinous. As a little girl, I looked very similar to my cousins from my father, and he was married to my aunt. And there was always whispering that he was my father. I went to Mrs. Johnson one time and I asked her, was he in fact my dad? I must have been about 13, and she told me, Lolita, don't ask me these questions anymore. I don't know, and I don't want to discuss it. You need to ask your mom this. I don't know why I never went and asked my mother. But you just knew there were certain subjects that they just weren't open for discussion.
I'm the mother, she's the daughter, she's the child, and I didn't want to tell her, you know, where she came from. I didn't want her to know that. I didn't want her to have to feel the pain that I felt. So I was trying to protect her, I thought.
When I was in my 30s, in fact, I went and I confronted my uncle and asked him, was he my father? And he told me, yes, he was. So as a little girl, I mean, he was my dad all this time, and I didn't know it. My cousins were my siblings. So I just felt totally betrayed all the way around. My whole life was a lie. I didn't know what my identity was, who I was. I learned how to emotionally shut down when I was being abused by my dad. I would just move away from my feelings. I was numb. Even upon a disclosure that he was my father and that all of this had been, you know, told to me as a way to protect me, I was numb inside. I felt nothing. Felt nothing. Felt dead inside.
A couple of years later, I met the man that I was supposed to marry and moved out to California because I really wanted to get Lolita away from Chicago. I wanted to start a new life for us. I wanted to leave all that and just leave that past behind and start a new one.
My stepfather came into my life, and because of him, I went to great schools. He gave me voice lessons and dance lessons and things like that, but I was never able to really get close to him. I was not able to bond to him because the abuse that had been done. Because as a little child, when you're violated that way, you don't know that you have a right to say no. You don't realize that you are not put here for somebody else's pleasure, for someone else's use. So when I got older, in order to be close in relationships, I would get myself involved in promiscuous situations when really I was not really wanting that. I wanted the closeness. But I didn't realize that I didn't have to go through demeaning acts in order to get that. And these are the things that my uncle/father taught me as a little girl, that I didn't have any say. That if I wanted to get attention, then I had to subject myself to certain things.
Going from Chicago to California, then we were thrown into another environment which was all white.
Whenever they showed blacks in school, it was like National Geographic. It was always bush people, you know, people with, you know, bones through their noses and climbing trees and their, you know, their breasts hanging low. And all the white kids would turn around and ask me, is that how your family acts? Is that, you know, is that how it is in your household? And so it was very embarrassing. And I did have some experience with people calling me nigger, and it was painful being in an all-white environment some of the time, and some of the time it wasn't. I can see God's hand in it, because in order for me to get the healing that I was going to have to do later on in life, I would have to be able to go in any kind of situation and not feel out of place. So the Lord used it, but I couldn't see it then.
My mother was a very educated woman. Every night I saw my mother, by her bed was a Bible, every single night. And my mother would read her Bible. But also, she would go and read other things. So when we came to California, she got into, all kinds of religions.
In the high school, we were getting more into the occult. My grandmother introduced us to the ESP lab, and so I started going to the ESP lab with my family.
I wasn't interested in speaking to anything dead or seeing anything dead. So, we can get that straight right now. So I would go to the meetings with them, and then they would all sit in a circle, and they'd turn the lights down, and they would say, okay, we're going to meditate on the green light or the red light or something.
The head guy would sit in the middle, and he would have us all close our eyes. We'd turn the lights out, and we would start, doing whatever we were doing, trying to read each other's auras and trying to pick up vibes and things. And I remember one night when he slowly started introducing us to the possibility of being open to having like psychic leaders or psychic teachers taking over various people's bodies. He was telling us we just needed to relax, that he could feel that the teachers were amongst us, and that if we were quiet and receptive, that one of the spirits would take over and speak through, one of the members. And quite a few times, a spirit spoke through the ESP teacher himself. And when the things would speak through him, it terrified me, because you could definitely hear when he would speak, something definitely was different. It was a much
deeper voice.
His whole presence changed. So it wasn't hogwash. You leave yourself open to demonic possession, but that's not what the occult tells you. You're thinking you're one with God, and that you're opening yourself up to these beings, and so you're going to be enlightened, and that was the main thing, to be enlightened. And this one particular psychic told us that there was witchcraft, that someone had put a spell against my mother. We went to this woman who considered herself a Christian, but yet she knew how to get rid of evil spells. All this stuff is done in the name of the Lord, which is so deceiving. And we didn't know at that point. We weren't aware of the occult and what it was all about. We had just kind of been pulled in. One time up in my bedroom, we had a candle that was lit. I was praying up there or whatever I was doing, chanting to get rid of these things. This candle was one of those big candles you see, they have like Christ on the front of them. It was one of these tall candles. That thing just exploded up in my bedroom. I ran out of there. I was like, oh God. I would hear noises and all kinds of weird stuff was happening. And I know it wasn't in my imagination. We had opened ourselves up to something pretty awful. They were saying that we were doing white witchcraft. We were doing good things, combating the bad spirits, and so when you put white witchcraft on it, it doesn't seem so bad. They called themselves white witches. I never considered myself a witch, but I was just working in the place, making love potions and, how to get rid of angry people and to attract money for you. And this incense was made out of this black stuff that looked like charcoal. We would make it up in this batch, and then we would heat it in the oven and cut it up in squares, and we would sell it and package it. And when we started getting into the occult, the whole atmosphere of the house was darker. And I remember having a dream when I was in high school. I dreamt that the whole house was on fire, and we were going down. The whole house was slowly going down, and the whole house was engulfed in flames. And I woke up, and I didn't, I've never forgotten that dream. I didn't know at the time, but I believed that was the Lord sharing with me that what we were doing was not of Him, and this was leading us towards hell. So I remember one night laying up in bed and praying and asking God, God, please help me. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, God. But I didn't know Him then in a personal way. But I believe He honored those prayers. Because for some reason we stopped going. I don't remember how it happened, but we just stopped going.
When my marriage had failed, then I was really at a real low point in my life. I wanted to know if there was truly a God. Because you know what? As far as I'm concerned, this life is not worth living.
Yeah, my mother and dad, they divorced, and my mom was pretty much having a hard time with drinking. I always could see that there was a lot of hurt in my mother's life, and I always wanted to protect my mom, and I always wanted to make her feel better and be there for her, but yet there was no one that was able to do that for me. So I had to stuff a lot of the feelings I had. I feel like I was a little adult too soon. When I got out of high school, I auditioned for the New Christy Minstrels and went on tour with them. I went to Japan with them, did an album over there, and my life was starting to become chaotic. And I was starting to drink because I was depressed, I was hurting, I was scared. I was very insecure. I had no self-esteem whatsoever. I had no idea that my childhood and my past was going to start taking over my life, and I started doing destructive, self-sabotaging things in my life. As a very young age, I was the enabler, the little rescuer, the little mommy to everybody, always counseling people and telling people what to do, and yet my whole life was out of control. The thing about it is during this period of time, my mother came to know the Lord. And she gave her heart to Christ, and I could see a change in her life. I could see that when my mother found the Lord, it was like she had found the answer to all of her problems. There was more peace in her life.
When I became born again, there was just a surge of peace that just came all over me, and I had never experienced that peace before, never in all my life, in the midst of the pain that I was going through. So that's how my depression was dealt with.
My mother one day woke me up in one of my drunken stupors, which she didn't know. You know, I was sleeping in the afternoon, and she asked me, did I want to receive Christ? And I looked at her kind of like perplexed, like, well, didn't we always have him? She said, no, you have to receive him. You have to say the sinner's prayer.
Her heart was always open to the Lord.
I would think about God to a certain degree. I always knew that I loved him, but I didn't really understand him. I just knew him as the God who loved the world. I had no concept that he loved me personally and that he died for me personally.
I came to her and I told her and my boys, you know, what had happened to me and that they need to be born again, and we are all sinners and falling short of God's glory, and in order to get to heaven we need to come into a personal relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. And so Lolita was open and she received the Lord with me. Now, you know, even though we become Christians, we still have things that we need to work out.
When I received Christ, I was 19 at the time. What I did subconsciously, not realizing, was he was the Lord of my spirit, but he was not the Lord of my life. I did believe that he died on the cross for my sins, and I did ask him into my life, but I did not give him the authority to work in my life. I did feel a sense of peace, and I felt his presence, but I had learned that I had to be self-sufficient. I learned that I wasn't going to depend on anybody. I always had to depend on myself emotionally. So I let the Lord have the spirit life. I knew I was going to heaven, but here in the physical realm, I did not allow the Lord to work in my life. So as a believer, I was going to church on one hand, and I never missed church. You know, I was baptized, the whole bit, but then I had another side of my life, which was, I believe, from the alcoholism and from molestation, I had a dual life going on. I had a life, I was in the church and doing really well for a period of time, and then I would start acting out and get involved with guys that were drinking, being promiscuous, getting into all kinds of stuff, not walking with the Lord at all.
I would say that she always had a heart for the Lord. And that doesn't mean that, that just because we're born again, that we don't still have problems, that we don't still have things that God is working on.
When I got pregnant with my first son is when I had a real personal encounter with the Lord. That we were really well known in the church, and then here I come up pregnant out of wedlock, and I was just absolutely devastated. That was the first time I really hit my knees and repented before the Lord, and that's when the Lord started ministering to me personally with my first son, when he started giving me night visions. And it's in Psalm 16 when he talks about he visits us in dreams at night. That was the first time the Lord came to me, and he told me that the baby that I carried was a boy, and I was to call his name Joseph. I was 4 months pregnant at the time. And the Lord started ministering to me and telling me that he was going to start doing work in my life, and he was going to start doing work in Joseph's life. So when the baby was born, it was a boy, and I named him Joseph. And for 5 years, I did really well. I abstained from any kind of relationships or whatever. But see, when you don't deal with these issues, it has a life of its own. When Joseph was born, I kind of stayed stable long enough for Joseph to get in the church and stuff like that. Then the Lord opened up the door for me to go with Debbie Boone on the road. And I started sabotaging my life again. Anytime anything good happened, I would do something to destroy it. I didn't feel like I deserved anything good. I had gone from singing for the president inaugural for Reagan, and a year later I was on food stamps and on welfare because of just, letting my career go, not doing what I was supposed to be doing. And all of this, as a Christian, I'm not proud of it. And I'm not telling people out there that, well, when you receive Christ, it doesn't work. No, what I'm just saying is it's possible for somebody to receive the Lord but for the Lord have to do a work in their life, a healing in their life. And it took the Lord a long time in order to get me to surrender to him. I had to hit many bottoms. During the time when my marriage was going bad, I was calling out to God. I was praying, I was fasting, I was coming against the enemy, and I was doing what I could because I knew my life was chaotic. During that time when I was praying out to the Lord came to me and he spoke to me audibly and told me that it was alcoholism, the problem. And that's when the Lord took me on a 15-year journey he started bringing therapists into my life and started dealing with the brokenness of the alcoholism and the molestation. To deal with the alcoholism that was going on in my family and for the incest and the things that had happened in my life, I had to go in the secular realm because people in the church were telling me, well, you're a new creature in Christ Jesus. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things are new. I would tell people that and they tell me, why dig up the past? It's covered in the blood. Well, that's true. Spiritually it was, but in the emotional realm, it was very much alive. It was not in the past. It was very much wreaking havoc in my present life. The Lord took me through those times alone. And then about 5 years later, I started going out to Monday Night Solutions, and then I started finding all the other Christians. But for my first 5 years, I did this on my own in 1985. I've been in recovery for about 16 years now. I was back in Chicago every night in dreams, different aspects, going through my grandparents' home, and going through the rooms and crying and grieving and feeling stuff that had been buried. I had dreams of myself of being a mangy dog. I had dreams of myself being very smelly. People would get close to me and would find me repulsive. See, these were all the things that my little girl inside felt, that I was repulsive and smelly because of the incest, but I didn't realize that. I didn't know all that, but the Lord took me through dreams for many years. I have them all recorded down. I don't want to negate people out there who have had an instantaneous delivery. I've heard people say they came to Christ and they were set free from alcohol and they were set free from all those things, and I say praise the Lord for that. But mine was not that way, and there are countless other Christians who are in the same boat that I was in and are in there today that have not had instantaneous healings. And the Lord, he goes according to what you can do. He had to take a long period of time for me to go through very painful aspects of my life. He is a God of a process.
With Lolita going to counseling, I have seen a big change in her life because, and I'll tell you what I've seen in her life. You go into Lolita's house and you will feel the peace of God that passes all understanding. In fact, this very place that we're standing, I came to a Mother's Day function here at the church, and they honored Lolita as the best mother of the year.
I've been in my church now for over six years. I'm on the praise team. I just did a concert not too long ago in Long Beach, and I have my own CD out. And so I minister from time to different Christian events with the women. I come and share my testimony. This is the first time I've ever shared it in great lengths this way outside of my church.
I have lived with this for all these years. So this is the first time that I am really coming out with it. I am glad that it's out. I'm now glad that it's out. And the Lord took my daughter to point that out to me. I have to be real honest. The Lord used my daughter because she had been going to recovery.
It's okay. Let me get you. There's a box of Kleenex sitting right over here.
She had to live with this as a child. I didn't tell her. She didn't find out till she was grown. The Lord had to use my daughter to break this open.
I believe if God had not been in my life, I'd be married about 4 or 5 times. I know I'd be drinking. I would have been just totally, just a washout. I got a really nice life today. I feel like God has done a lot of healing. I really do.
God has always had his hands on me, and I know it. Because every time I get on my knees to pray, every time I look into God's eyes, I'm just so grateful. He has taken the ashes and he's turned them into joy.
I may not be a millionaire. I may not have a brand new Frigidaire. My clothes ain't all fancy and my car ain't brand new, but there is joy in my house. I've got joy in my house. There is joy in my house. There is joy in my house.
The Bible states that God takes us out of the pit of destruction, and he sets our feet upon a rock, making our footsteps firm. Then he puts a new song in our hearts. This is Lolita's story. God taking somebody who's gone through so many horrible things and restoring her. He's even restored her gift of music. If this program has been a blessing to you, please write to us. It's such an encouragement to hear from you. Our email address is damascusroads@tbn.org. Or if you'd like to know more about our guests, then go to the TBN website, tbn.org, and simply click on the Damascus Roads logo. Tell your friends about Damascus Roads, your church, your neighbors. We want everyone to be watching this program to see how God is still working in people's lives today. And from all of us here at Damascus Roads, God bless you. And we'll see you next time.
He's always faithful. Never mean or cruel. I don't have to be pretend or have the right speech. Jesus, my Savior, his love for me is so sweet. He gives me things that money can't buy. I can't outgive his kindness no matter how I try. You can't buy peace or comfort your own insides, but there is joy in my house. I've got it.
Tonight's program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network. And only with your love gift of support can it stay on the air. So please write to TBN, P.O. Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711. Or email us at damascusroads@tbn.org.
Is that it? Oh, hallelujah. Oh, it's nice meeting you fellas.